Welcome to the Seeking Wisdom podcast with Joni Marmo. Real stories, life lessons with faith at the center. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Come, Holy Spirit, fill both of our rooms. We're in separate locations. Fill our hearts with your peace. Help us to remember this journey that we went through so many years ago. Help us to remember it with clarity and with joy and with love and with gratitude. And help us to convey that in this podcast, because we know that we're going to help people. And that's always been the intent of the chemo updates that were written so many years ago, and us coming together today to just share the story with more context. So I just ask in Jesus' heavenly name that you help us and you guide us, and that this be a fruitful podcast episode, and that you may bless us, Lord, always and forever. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. In 2001, at the age of 30, my guest was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer with metastasis to the liver. The prognosis? He had a 5% chance to live 5 years. The doctors were being generous, though, with that statement, because the reality is that they didn't believe that he would survive 3 months. Well, I'm happy to report that it's been 24 years since that diagnosis, and against all odds, today he is alive and well. After all this time, he is ready to share his story, and we are so honored that he's decided to do so here. In today's episode of the Seeking Wisdom podcast, we're going to go on an incredible journey where science, faith, and community came together for one cause: to save this young man's life. I'm your host, Joni Marmo, and this particular story is very personal for me, because the protagonist, my guest, is my younger brother, JC Fernández. Hello,
sister.
Sibling.
Hello, sister.
Hello. I told you I was going to get emotional. It came sooner than I thought.
I know. I was going to say, wow. Save it for later.
I know, because this is going to be a long one. But anyway, thank you for being here and sharing your story. I know that it's been, like I said in the intro, it's been 24 years since you went through all of this. And it feels like it's been a lifetime since all of this happened. But at the same time, it feels like it was yesterday. You know how time is so weird that way. And, you know, I don't know. It's just, I'm grateful that you're finally ready to share it publicly.
Yeah, it's and for me, it's the same. Like, what's strange for me is I kind of met a ton of people since then that didn't know any of that story. So it almost seems like I've lived a couple of lives, 2 separate lives. But yeah, it seems like it was forever ago. And there's days where, you know, I'll be like, wow, it comes back to me in rushes where it's like it was yesterday. So it's weird. It's a weird thing to experience.
Yeah, it is, but it's a wonderful one because you're here to tell the story, and you weren't supposed to be. Hence why the episode is called Against All Odds. I actually thought of the Phil Collins song.
I was going to say played in the background.
But anyway, I wanted to share with our viewers just a little bit of our background, right? As I mentioned, we're brother and sister, born and raised in Miami. Our parents are Cuban exiles, so they came to this country in the late 60s. Our dad passed away of a very aggressive cancer when I was 11, you were 9, so we were very young. And we were raised by our mom, you know, single mom. You know, she never remarried, and her focus was always just working, surviving, and raising us. And we also have an older brother who's much older than us. So when our dad passed, so he's our half brother. He has another father, but when our dad passed, he was already in his 20s. So he was already, married, and he had just had a baby. So, for most of our upbringing, it was the three of us, right? Mom, you, and I. We went to Catholic school. Mom made sure of that. And then you went to college for a bit. Right? Did I miss anything? Anything pertinent or important?
No. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there, but I don't think we want to go into too much detail.
Exactly. That's pretty much, our background and our upbringing. But I do think it's important to, talk about, the fact that our dad died when we were so young, because it did have, and I know for me, and we've talked about this obviously, but for me, it had an indelible mark, losing a father at such a young age, and I know for you as well. And we processed it differently. First of all, I'm a girl, you're a boy. I was a little bit older, you were younger. Everybody processes grief differently, but I think it really is important to our story.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that's something that I don't think about often, and especially the way it affected me. And I kind of hear from other people how it affected me, and it kind of like, really, I did that, and I've given it a lot of thought. And when I think of the time, I was 9 years old, because it's kind of led the way to how I react to these vital, important moments in life, especially when they're of a sad nature or a tragic nature. I became not withdrawn, but I almost compartmentalized it. Like, I wasn't in denial or anything, but there are very few memories that I remember. I remember coming home from school that day, turning on the TV and watching a Popeye cartoon, like if it was just any regular day. And I remember Mom coming into the room, shutting off the TV and screaming.
Yeah.
And I think I take that moment and I kind of analyze that. And I analyze that along with another big moment that happened and when you got to put yourself in a 9-year-old's body. That year, I got glasses for the first time.
That's right.
So when you go to school, when you get glasses, you're kind of afraid of being called Four Eyes and getting all these, you're afraid of being bullied. And I was never bullied as a child, but when I got glasses, I was afraid. So you have that, plus the fact that your father just died makes you so different in a crowd,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was something I didn't talk about. It was something I was just very. It's something that happened, but I didn't want anybody to think that I was different from anybody. I think that's where I kind of developed my defense mechanism, which was always humor. Whenever I get nervous or I feel cornered, that's when I get funny. So I can never be a stand-up comedian unless you start threatening me. But I realize that, and I think it all stems from that event happening so young.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that too, and I think it's important to the story when you mentioned how you didn't want to you stand out at school, right? Because you were wearing the glasses, and our dad passed. We went to a very small school where I think there were a total of 40 kids in,
we were all family.
In my case, in my class, we were all, the graduating class was 40 kids. So I think more or less the same for you. So, you're right. We did stick out because, oh, wow, yeah, their dad died. And I remember going to an elementary school, middle school reunion, because since it was Catholic school, it ran through 8th grade. And I remember as adults, my friends from that class talking about that day when we found out that our dad died, because we were at school, and they were affected by it, 30 years later.
Because all the parents knew each other. Everybody knew each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
why it's funny because I've never minded going to a new school. Like when we left Jesu and I went to St. Peter and Paul, I had no problems adjusting to the new school. I had no problems adjusting to high school because it was almost like I can hit the reset switch. I can
Mm-hmm.
become a new person. I've got all
Right.
these new people that are now meeting me. I can change who I am. And I did, if you think about it, when I went uh, from from middle school to high school, I went and got contact lenses. I changed my
Right.
name. I know I was no longer Juanqui. Now I'm JC. And
Yeah.
it's one of those things where you can change your persona, and it was something that I liked. I liked going to different schools.
Yeah, it's funny. I never had an issue adjusting to new environments either. So maybe it is. I never thought of it that way, or I
Mhm.
never made the connection. But maybe you're right. It was that incident kind of forced us to adjust to a
Mhm.
new environment. And yeah, I'm not one to be afraid of change, and
Right.
maybe that informed that decision. So yeah, that's a good point. Oh my gosh, we're having a whole therapy session here. That was not
And
the plan.
free.
I know, and that was not the plan of this podcast. So, so back to you and your journey. So, you're a young adult. You're in your 20s. I mean, would you say that you lived a healthy lifestyle, all things considered?
I was. I mean, I wasn't a vegetarian, or I wouldn't say that I ate healthy. But I wasn't the weight that I am now. I would
Hmm.
ride bicycle. I was always on my bike. Every
Hmm.
Saturday and Sunday, I would ride, 30 miles each day. Sure, I would partake in fast food, but it wasn't a daily thing. um I would go out and hang out with my friends and drink, but it wasn't, I would never get drunk. I wasn't someone that did drugs. Nothing like that. So I just lived a normal life, not an incredibly healthy life, but it wasn't an unhealthy life either.
Right, right. And I bring that up because I think it's important, because your diagnosis and what happened to you happened at such a young age,
Mhm.
that I wanted to clarify that point, that it wasn't like, you were a heavy drinker or heavy smoker or, anything like that. It was just, pretty standard. And the bike thing is important, and it will come to life later in the story. There's an important
There's a
correlation
theme.
with the bike.
Yeah.
There's a theme with the bike. So, talk to me a little bit about the symptoms. So, you turn 30, and what happens? You start having symptoms.
So this is actually a funny story because um, I started losing weight, and I thought I was losing weight because I was exercising again, and I started eating a little healthier because I had gained a little weight. I was always feeling tired. I thought I was tired because I was always exercising, so I was correlating the two. I was having stomach problems, but nothing that would cause alarm. The biggest thing I would say is I was going to the bathroom a lot. So
Mm,
I would go to the bathroom maybe 6 or 7 times at night. It wasn't even during the daytime. And each time I went, there was very little that would come out. Like I'd have a strong urge to go, and when I would go, it would just be a little.
mm,
So I didn't know what that was. And that's
yeah.
what kind of led me to go to a doctor. And there wasn't any blood in the stool, nothing like that. In fact, I remember a conversation I had with Jerry, our brother,
Mm,
and this was the age of WebMD. So I was self-diagnosing, and
right.
we're talking, and he
But
says, "Well, what do you think?"
but I'm
Hmm?
sorry to interrupt, but just for context, I mean, this is 2001, so it's not like,
This is 24 years ago. Yeah,
yeah,
the
yeah.
world is
So
a
this
lot
is,
different. There's no
yeah. So when,
smartphones. There's nothing like that.
right. So you mentioned WebMD, but that was very, what would you say, kind of
That was high
new,
tech for the
right?
time. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly.
So
Go
I would
on. I'm
plug in
sorry.
my symptoms, and it gave me this thing. And I remember talking to Jerry, and he's like, "So what do you think it is?" And I'm like, "Jerry, I can tell you one thing. It's not. It's not cancer. It's probably colitis. It's probably an ulcer. Who knows? But it's not cancer."
Okay. And so
So yeah.
then, so I'm sorry, we're laughing. This is what we do, people. We laugh at our misery. So you tell Jerry definitively this is not cancer, thanks to WebMD. But yeah, you're 30 years old. It's 2001. I do remember you were losing a lot of weight. You were very thin, and you were very fatigued. I remember we went to visit our niece, Mylene, who was at University of Florida. She used to play softball. And I remember we did a trip, all of us, to go see her play. And I remember specifically you just being very, very, very tired. And that caught my attention. But again, none of us really thought that it was going to be what it ended up being.
I'll even share another one. When U2 opened their Elevation tour and you were working that first show, I went to both shows. In the first show, I was fine. And the second show, I could barely sit through the second show. And I was just like, I got to get out of here. I'm so tired. And my stomach was like hurting and stuff like that. And I was like 3 weeks before I got diagnosed.
Yeah, because that was a freak gig that I got. I used to work in television, and a friend was directing the show. They were actually going to record the concert to then stream it to I don't know where, or it wasn't stream. It was called, they were uplinking it to wherever country it was. And he called me to be the assistant director. And so I had the opportunity to go to this rehearsal, and you were a huge U2 fan. So I remember inviting you to come to the rehearsals. That was really cool, by the way. That was awesome.
I skipped school
and you're
to
right.
do that.
I know. Yeah, because you were studying. You were still like going to a college, right? I forget what you were studying.
Yeah, I was going for network engineer and IT and stuff like that.
Exactly. So, right, you skipped class so you could go to this thing. It was super cool, so worth it. But you're right. It happened 3 weeks before you found out. So, parallel to all this, you go to a doctor and they, like you, assumed it was colitis or whatever. Let's schedule a colonoscopy. And it took forever for you to get this colonoscopy done, right? So what happens then?
So I went like it was maybe January or February that year. I went to a doctor, and sure enough, the same symptoms that WebMD spit out. They said it was probably colitis or something of the sort. So they scheduled a colonoscopy. There were no appointments available till April, so it was 3 months that I was waiting for an appointment. So I finally got the colonoscopy done, and it was really strange. I remember waking up in pain. I remember screaming, and
during the procedure,
during the colonoscopy. And then I remember a nurse like jumping up and coming up to me, and like they must have given me more drugs because I don't remember anything else. So when I woke up, the doctor came up to me and they said, "Listen, we couldn't finish the colonoscopy." And it took me back to the prep. At the time, the prep was this 1 gallon bottle of it's called Go Lightly, and I had to drink all that. And I was so bloated, I thought I was going to explode. That I had to call the doctor and everything. What's going on? It's like, sometimes that happens. So when the colonoscopy finally happened, he's like, "Listen, we couldn't finish the colonoscopy. There wasn't enough, it wasn't clear enough, and we couldn't get the host through. I want to schedule a barium enema to see what's going on in there." And I didn't think anything of it. I'm like, okay, we'll schedule the test. So we scheduled the test. They had done a biopsy. So we scheduled the test. I had that done, I believe, the next day. I mean, things were just going, it was very fast. And I remember talking you through it, and the doctor calls me out of the blue and says, "Listen, if you can come down to the office, we'd like to talk about your results." I'm like, "Okay." Not thinking a thing.
Yeah.
And then for some reason, you said, "I'll meet you down there."
Yeah.
And I thought, I mean, if you want to, you can go ahead and meet me down. I thought it was very weird. Like, again, I wasn't thinking anything of it. I wasn't thinking anything bad. It was just, okay, the doctor wants to go over the results. I get to the doctor's office, and that's when he tells me for the first time, there's a tumor that's blocking your colon. and that's why we couldn't finish the colonoscopy because the camera wouldn't go through.
Mhm.
And then he said, and we tested it, and it is cancerous.
Mm.
Um, and it's strange because I was taking this all in like if he was talking to someone else.
Yeah.
Um, there was a lot of stuff going on. Like I was trying to process what are you saying? And he started mentioning surgery. You know, the next step was probably going to be surgery to take it out. And I'm thinking, okay. And it's really strange because, and funny how my mind works. All I thought is that we were going to go to a surgeon, they're going to cut it out, and I was going to be fine. And we walk out, and that's when you tell me you're coming home with me. I'm like, what? And you kidnapped me. You took me into your car. But it's funny how I just let it happen. Like
Yeah.
and I think it was because I was just processing so much. Like, what is going on? I'm usually good at processing things, and I was just so out of it that
Yeah.
I just willingly went along with this kidnapper. Um,
Well, my perspective of that was I I wasn't even nervous either in a weird way. I remember that I had requested some days off from work just because I didn't even have any plans to go anywhere. So I was off. And when you told me that you were going to go to the doctor, I'm like, "Oh, I'll go with you," and for purposes of context as well, at the time you were single, so I was like, yeah, sure, I'll go with you, and you and I have always been very close. So I had nothing better to do. I was doing a staycation. And for me, when the doctor said that, I remember like looking at the doctor. I can't remember the man's name, but I remember his face. I remember every inch of that office. It's the weirdest thing. And I just remember looking at you just to see like your reaction. And I could tell that you were just, like you were saying, processing and taking all of this in. And I tend to be, in those moments, I tend to be very like, I just go into this, let's get it done mode. And I was just like, okay, no, you're coming home with me. And you just, we left your car, the whole thing, you
yeah.
just came home.
And I didn't even think about it. I didn't even think about the car. I
Yeah.
mean, and it's strange because you say you remember all that. I don't remember the guy's face. I don't
Mm.
remember where it was. I don't remember his office. I don't remember one detail of that place. It's funny that you mentioned that. I don't remember any of it, and I think it's
Yeah.
because immediately my mind went elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's crazy because we were living, so my husband and I were living in a transition home. We had sold our house and we were gonna, we were looking for another one. So we were renting a house, it was a nice house. It was a 2-story, the kids, whatever. Mom was living with us. And I remember, coming home and the drive home, I was freaking out and I start calling, your primary doctor or whatever. And they were like, yeah, the first appointment's in July. And this was
Hmm.
April. And I'm April 10th, by the way, which is important to the story. And
Hmm.
and I'm like, July, did you hear what I just said? My brother has cancer. Like I was just freaking out
And I
driving
was calling
home.
my friends. I'm calling my friends, letting them know what's going on. But yeah, I remember
Yeah.
you screaming at surgeons and stuff, and you actually ended up getting an appointment with a guy at Baptist again, who I don't remember,
Yeah.
because the next couple of weeks or the next week and a half were just a whirlwind of activity. And
Yeah.
it's amazing that I do remember the steps that happened. I don't that surgeon. I don't remember who he is. I don't remember where he was. I don't remember anything about. I remember the appointment.
Yeah.
Um, so it was after. Well, we we have to talk about that night. So I spent the night at your house,
Yeah.
and Carlos, your husband, brought my car to the house,
Hmm.
and it's a very important detail. My car at the time was a manual, it was a stick shift, and he parked it behind your car. So the next morning, I had to go to work.
Right.
So I had gotten dressed in the same clothes that I was in the night before, and you were making your coffee, and you decided to walk me out because you had to go get your newspaper, and you tell me, I'll never forget this. You said, JC, I have decided that every day I am going to give you positive reinforcement and I'm going to say something to help you along in your day. And this is as we're walking to the car. I get into the car, close the door, you pick up the newspaper, and I, I put in the clutch, I turn on the car, and you say, today is the first day, and this is what I'm going to say to you. You are not George Costanza. I went, okay. I pull out the clutch, and my brother-in-law had left the car in gear, and the car lurches forward and hits your car. I look at you, you're looking at me, and I'm like, are you sure about that? That informed everything that came after. That was the beginning.
That was the beginning. And the reason I mentioned the George Costanza thing to you was because, and it's so funny you mentioned the newspaper, right? Again, like it's been so long since all of this happened, but you were a huge Seinfeld fan. And so you were always joking how you were George Costanza. So I wanted to just give you affirmation, like you are not George Costanza. And I remember I was still because I didn't have a steady, I was still on staycation. That's what it was. That's why I was relaxing. So, I was like, you are not George Costanza. Boom. And I was like, oh, never mind.
And luckily nothing happened to the cars, but man, that was yeah, I think I am.
Yeah, that was a classic precursor. So we start mobilizing though, right? Because as a family, we did tell mom, obviously, and that's important because we'll get into something that we didn't tell mom later on. But we shared it with the family, etc. Everybody was aware. So now we're all in action mode to get you proper health care, right? So you called a friend who connected you with a doctor who ordered the CT scan for you.
So what happened was, and yeah, this was like the beginning of the mobilization of the network, both friends, family. We saw that doctor, the initial surgeon, and he did what's called a sigmoidoscopy, which is just like a colonoscopy. They put the tube up your butt, but they don't go all the way. And he went in there, and I remember seeing it on camera. It was almost like it was gray tissue. And he pulls it out, and he's like, yeah, so what you're going to need he said he saw the tumor, and he said, what we're going to need is a CT scan. And that's when I was like, okay, how are we going to get the CT scan? So we called a couple places, and again, they didn't have any appointments available. So I was talking to my friend Tammy, and she mentioned, listen, I'm going to talk to my doctor. She had a very close friend who was her doctor, Dr. Rosen. I still remember that. And called him up. He saw me that day, wrote the script, called the imaging center, and I think the next day I was doing a CAT scan, which was crazy in and of itself. So that's when the network really started its movement. So we had the CAT scan, and it was interesting because at that time is when I started getting all this information. I remember you giving me a FedEx package with mushroom powder in it, and people were sending me articles, and it had a stack like this of paperwork, and I was just getting so overwhelmed with information. And appointments here and appointments there. And we had a referral for a surgeon at Baptist Hospital. At the same time, our brother Jerry knew a close friend of theirs, of the family, was a doctor at the Sylvester Center, the University of Miami, the cancer center.
Yeah, he was an oncologist.
So he made a call. And again, I remember being in the car with Jerry. I don't know why I was with Jerry at this moment, but we were in the car, and he's like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, listen, there's just so many things going on. Whoever gives me the first appointment is who I'm going to go to, because I'm tired of the second opinions and going back and forth. I'm just going to put all my eggs in one basket. So at that moment, I received a call, and it was a call from Baptist. And the surgeon, the office there said, we can see you on Tuesday. And I think it was a Friday. It was late in the week. They said Tuesday. I'm like, Tuesday? Oh my God, put me down.
Yeah.
And I was like, we got Tuesday. And we were both very happy about that. Now, 5 minutes later, I get a call from the Sylvester Center, and they say, we can see you Monday. I'm like,
Hmm.
Monday? Put me down. And I look over and I'm like, Monday it is.
Yeah.
So that's how that started.
Yeah.
And I called back the other office and canceled that appointment.
Yeah.
And I decided right then and there, whatever happens, good or bad, it's going to happen through the Sylvester.
Yeah. And for those who are not familiar, the Sylvester is part of the University of Miami health system. And so they're known as the University of Miami Sylvester Comprehensive Cancer Care Clinic. I think that's the full name.
So the Sylvester Comprehensive Cancer Care Clinic.
Yeah.
It's a mouthful.
So it's a mouthful, but they're amazing. So we end up going to that infamous appointment on that following Monday. And I do remember that it was Jerry, you, and I. So it was the three of us that went to the appointment, and we met with the surgeon, right? The GI surgeon, Dr. Hellinger.
Dr. Michael Hellinger.
Dr. Michael Hellinger. Thanks to him. And he gives us, this was 6 days later. So this was April 16th, very important to the story. And I remember again the office and, the setting. But go ahead and tell the story of what Dr. Hellinger shared.
This is where I start remembering visuals. I remember the chair specifically. Every time I sat in this godforsaken chair, I received bad news.
Yeah.
So he totally amazed me. I remember I said, I thought I'm going to have surgery. This is it. And I'm going to be out of here. No big deal.
Yeah.
He takes the CAT scan film that we brought, and it was amazing to me. I'm used to like, in Dr. House where they put it up on the on the white, light, and he just goes like this up to the light, and he just flicks through it. And he asks you and Jerry to get out of the room because he wants to examine my liver.
Yeah.
So my abdomen. He didn't say liver. He said my abdomen. So I get on the chair. I get on the table. You guys left the room, and he starts examining me, and I actually felt pain. And he called you guys back in. And at that point, he says, "Well, you've got extensive liver damage. It's spread to the liver. The tumor in your colon. The reason you're going to the bathroom so much is because it's almost completely blocking your colon. This is inoperable. It's incurable, and we'll do everything we can to keep your to make your quality of life as good as possible." So my mind goes into weird places, and you'll see this happen throughout the story, and this was one of those times because I'm just like, he's telling me all this, and I'm like, so Doc, what are my chances?
Mm-hmm. I remember that question vividly.
So I remember the face that he put. He did not want to tell me. Mm-hmm. And he says, you have a 5% chance of living 5 years. And it was the only time, this was the only time, because it hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm like, what just happened here? Mm-hmm. And I remember saying, oh my God, I'm a dead man. Mm-hmm. And it was the first time. And I remember like, putting my head in my hands. You guys were like, trying to comfort me. And I was like, oh my God, what is going on? So that's when he starts talking about what's going to go on. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, what we have to do is we have to cut that tumor out, and we have to get you on chemotherapy as soon as possible. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to give you what's called a colostomy bag. We're going to have that. And that'll enable you to recover quickly from the surgery to be able to to get on chemotherapy really quick.
Hmm.
And I remember just telling him, I'm like, doctor, I am 30 years old. You are not putting a bag on me. Um, so you do whatever you have to do, but you're not putting a bag on me. And he left the room. He left the room for like 15 minutes. He comes back. He says that we may have an option. Have you ever heard of a stent? And I'm like, wow, I've heard of them that, for like heart problems. And he goes, we can try and put a stent in your colon to open it up, so you can go to use the bathroom. And at that point, we don't need to cut you open. We go in through the same place that you do a colonoscopy. We put in the stent, it opens you up, and you can start having chemo right away. And I'm like, well, there's your option. Let's do that.
Yeah.
So it was strange. That's one of the I think that was the only time where, well, no, there were other times too where I just kind of stopped what was happening and I said, no, you're not doing that. And it's a theme where it kind of helps other people when they go into this. Like I gave myself to the doctors, but at the same time, I wasn't just going to freely do everything that they asked me.
Yeah.
I trusted them implicitly, but if I just sensed something off that I was just not ready to do, I would make sure that to tell them and find another option.
Yeah, I think that I was about to say the same thing because you were very open to, whatever needed to get done. I remember everything that they were going to do to you was what considered non-protocol. So you were signing papers, left and right that, yeah, fine, I'll be the guinea pig of the year, but yet there were certain key moments where you did say no. And I do remember you saying, no, that's not happening. And the beauty of the Sylvester is that they're a research center and they do try different things. And in your case, you were so young. It was so uncommon that they were like, we're just gonna do everything we can to save you, to help you. And it wasn't even save you. It was because he was very clear, and you were right. He didn't want to answer that question. And I remember because he said there's no cure. So for me, I was like, that was already internally, I was, oh my gosh. And then you went and asked the question, and I'm looking at you like, really? Okay, here we go. And then he gives that answer. And then, of course, important to the story, because we got to the Sylvester through a friend of Jerry's who was an oncologist. Jerry got more information that was more realistic that we found out about much later, which was that they really didn't expect you to go past a few months. I mean,
and I think that's why I appreciated them so much. It's because from the very first moment, it's not like he said, listen, you're going to get the bag whether you want it or not. He did go out and look for an option, and it was an option that he probably never tried before.
yeah.
And that was something that carried on throughout the stay there, is that they listened. They listened to what you were saying. They were very empathetic, and that was the first moment. And I think throughout the kooks that I had as doctors, each of them, they kind of gave me this feeling that I was in good hands.
Yeah.
Because for some reason, while he did tell me, he was honest with me, and I can tell that he didn't want to tell me. So that told me this guy cares.
Yeah.
And then he leaves the room, comes back with an option. So I'm thinking, okay, I've got faith. I've got faith in this guy. I've got hope. He's giving me something.
Yeah.
At least I'm not being shuffled around like a number. There's something there, and I felt. At that moment, I felt okay. I'm in good hands. I didn't think I was gonna, come out of it like I did, but I thought, all right, so this journey's not, it's not ideal, but it's not. We'll get through something. We'll get through it.
Yeah. And JC, something important that I kind of skipped over, but we have to go back to the bike. After you got diagnosed, and I don't remember exactly if it was after the first time you got cancer or when it became very bleak, but you asked me for one favor because at this point you were officially kidnapped. Like we moved you into the house because you were living in an apartment with a roommate, right? And we were like, no, 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 come home, and we accommodated everything, and so we could take care of you. And mom started making you the concoction of juices, vegetable juices and all that. But you asked me for one favor. And what was that favor?
So I want to say it was the first night because I
Yeah.
needed time to actually read this, but I asked you for this. So this is the book, by the way.
Yeah.
That this is 24 years old.
For those
And
that are listening, it's the Lance Armstrong book. It's not about the bike.
so what's interesting about it is talking about this in 2025, the name Lance Armstrong kind of it doesn't give the same feelings that it gave 24 years ago. So
Mm-hmm.
I gotta give some context. Um, what I think of him now, I think he's a bad person. He ruined a lot of people's lives. Also, he can, maintain fortune and glory,
Mm-hmm.
and he's unrepentant. And he deserves to get banned from everything that's out there. But something also exists at the same time, and that you cannot take away. This guy did survive cancer. He did inspire millions, and he did raise almost $500 million for cancer research and started a foundation that's still active today helping cancer patients. You can't take that away
Mm-hmm.
because of the bad things that he did.
Yeah.
At the time, he was a hero. He had just won his second Tour de France. I was a huge cycling fan. I started watching the Tour de France, and I started following cycling with Greg LeMond.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember hearing about this new up and comer, Lance Armstrong, and I watched him in a couple of races. And I remember him getting a cancer diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I thought, oh, that's too bad. He was the next Greg LeMond. He was going to be the next great American talent. It's really sad that we're not going to see this happen. And then all of a sudden, this kid enters the Tour de France. He wins. I remember him winning the prologue, getting the yellow jersey, and I followed that Tour de France. I'm like, oh my God. And I was crying when he won.
Yeah.
Wins his second one. He comes out with the book. So he was on my mind. There's a reason I'm wearing yellow. I
Yeah.
don't know if you remember, I always wore yellow to my chemo treatments.
Yes. Yes.
So I remember he brought the book out, and I don't know why I never picked it up. Maybe I wasn't interested in a cancer story at the time, but it popped into my head the minute it happened. I'm like, I gotta read something. I gotta read what's going on, and I'll read you an excerpt of it that kind of is the theme of that recovery and kind of my life since then. Actually, I'll read it now.
Yeah, I was going to say, are you going to read it now? Because
So,
thanks to you, I ended up reading the book as well. I thought it was a fascinating book, and I got into cycling, and I used to watch the Tour de France with you. It was he has a remarkable story, and everything that happened afterwards and everything that was uncovered is unfortunate. And I guess we all make mistakes, and it's just sad. But he, like you said, he did do a lot of good. So.
it's something you can't take away,
No.
and I don't, whether he used it as a cover or whatever his intentions were, it ended up helping people.
Yeah.
And that's all you can
That's all
take
that
away
matters.
from it. That's
Yeah.
all that matters.
Yeah.
So this is right at the end of the book, and it's one little paragraph, and it basically says if children have the ability to ignore odds and percentages, then maybe we can all learn from them. When you think about it, what other choice is there but to hope? We have two options medically and emotionally: give up or fight like hell. That's what I took. Ignore the odds, hope for a good outcome, and fight like hell.
Yeah. I love that you read that now in today's day and age, because everything is about data and metrics and analytics. And my gosh, I don't even like watching baseball that much anymore because everything is so, like everything is so numbers driven and so almost like impersonal, where that he's so right. It's like, what about hope? What about, having faith and at least fighting till to the end, and I loved it. I really enjoyed his book as well. So I'm glad that you asked me for that favor, and I'm glad that it helped you because it helped me too. It was great.
It was definitely a source of inspiration. And I don't know if you remember, I also got another book from Gus. It was called The Cancer Survivor's Handbook, which I still have.
Gus is your best friend from high school. Yeah.
He's my brother from another mother.
Yeah.
So this book is super thick, and it was with the best of intentions. And I remember opening that book and reading the 5% number, which confirmed what the surgeon said. And I closed it and I'm like, I don't know if I should be reading this book.
Thank you, Gus, but
And I never opened it again. But I'll tell you what, I remember again how my mind works in all sorts of weird ways, and it goes back to ignoring the odds. So I took that 5% number and I started giving context and adding to it. I started thinking, okay, this is 5% of everyone in history that's gotten colon cancer. So we've got to think about how far medicine has gone today. So my 5% has got to be a little more than 5 right now. Number 2, this includes all these people that have never gotten, that have either bad doctors or bad medical care. So that means my number has got to be at least in the 15 to 20 by now. So I kept doing that and justifying until I got to like a half and half number. So I'm like, I got a half and half chance here. But you got to do whatever you can. You do whatever you can to get your mindset, in a certain way. Because if not, you're going to live the rest of your days in despair,
Yeah. Well, I think it's great that you think that way. And with, what did you say? Your warped mind. Your warped mind worked for you. So there you go. But it's really good advice.
And time and time again, it worked, by the way.
Yeah. And, unfortunately, there's a lot of people that succumb to disease, right? And we're not making light of that either. Your case is a very unique case, and I still because I have had cancer diagnoses since then, and I also get treatment at Sylvester, and I seen some of the staff that helped you. And they still remember your case. Your case was very unique. So, but the fact that that you thought the way you were thinking, I think also helped you in that whole thing of mind over body and having a hopeful, joyful attitude, is also, I think, very important as part of healthcare, and when you're going through something like this, which leads me perfectly into your next doctor, because Dr. Hellinger puts a stent in you, which, by the way, just as a sidebar, because you're not aware, but Jerry and I were in the waiting room while you were having this procedure done, and I just remember him and I being really so out of sorts. Like, we just didn't know how to process this information, and we really felt like we could only share this with each other, because we had to be calm for mom, and obviously our spouses were in on it too. But in those moments, like at the hospital, it was just him and I. And I remember we were like, well, okay, we should eat something. And we would get like a random yogurt, and I'm like, I can't eat this. Neither can I. And, and also for context, and I've never talked to this about this with Jerry, because I know that it's a difficult subject, but he, his first son passed away in 1990 when he was 9 years old of a brain tumor. So Jerry also carries, a very heavy loss in his heart, and seeing you, his younger brother, who really, because as I mentioned earlier, Jerry is so much older than us. Jerry became like a father figure, if you will, for us. That I think all of that has to have had, you know, a definitive,
Oh, I'm
difficult
sure.
impact on him,
I'm
in a
sure.
different way.
Hmm.
And I always say this ever since, mom passed away, because for me, that's been the biggest loss for me. And, you and I haven't talked about this, but, grief, everybody grieves differently,
Hmm.
and we all go through the process differently, right? So anyway, I just bring that up because I think it's important to this story as well, that
Absolutely.
our family also had that huge loss, whatever it was, 11 years before,
Yeah, and
and that
I
was
think
important.
this is where you need to talk about, because it's really it's a decision we all made about telling mom,
Yeah,
about how bad it was.
right.
Because, and I don't know if you guys decided during that moment and then let me in on it, but I remember you guys talking to me about it. Um,
Yeah.
and I'll tell you
Yeah.
what. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, that I was just going to say that, yeah, I think we were just concerned for her, even though mom, God bless her and may she rest in peace. She was so strong. But the thing is, she also internalized everything, but she was a woman of such deep faith that she immediately, when the cancer diagnosis, she went to her room and she was praying, and she was such a prayer warrior. And we would always joke about how, she has direct lines, contact with all the saints and the
We were
angels and
like,
God and
we
all of
were like,
that.
she's praying again. God must be like, oh my God, you again.
Exactly. But yeah, we did decide to not tell mom the
I,
severity of the
I'll tell you
situation.
what, though. I think she knew
Hmm.
instinctively,
Yeah.
um, just because of the way, especially at the beginning. And you know this story, and this is where the juices started, by the way.
Hmm.
The way she would look at me, it would break my heart, the way she would look at me. And I was trying to do something, because I made, after the Armstrong book, I made a lot of decisions where I was like, all right, I'm gonna fight like hell.
Hmm.
And every time I had a conversation with mom, I'd get lost in thought looking at how she was looking at me.
Yeah.
And it's like, mom, it looks like mom's talking to someone who's already dead, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I felt so bad for her, but at one point I just said, Mom, you need to stop. She didn't even notice. She didn't realize it. And she's like, what? And I'm like, every time I talk to you, you look like, you're talking to someone. You look like you're talking to a ghost, like someone
Hmm.
who's not there. Um, and I go, Mom, I don't care what you do. I will do whatever you ask of me, but you need to find something where that'll distract you, something that will, you know, that you need to find something that can help me.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'll do anything you want me to do. And of course, she picked the one thing that I hated, vegetables. But I'll tell you what, I made a promise to her, and I actually think that was the cure. I think that's what cured me. And she would always, and it was actually a fun, collaboration, because it was a collaboration between my mother and I, our mother and I, because I remember she would always be changing the formula.
Yes.
And me always telling her, "Oh, mom, no. Oh, no, this one doesn't do." And she would switch it up, and other ones would taste better than the other. And we would kind of say, "Well, what does it taste like? What do you want?" And it was always the beets. She could never get rid of the beet taste until she finally came across strawberries. And this was like late in
Yes.
the process already. When she found strawberries, that canceled out the beets, and it was like, oh my god! But she would always make me the drink in the morning, and I was like, all right. And and it's funny because she really took to it. She
Yeah.
was always like, we got to go to the grocery store and get the vegetables. We're missing this, we're missing that. That's the one thing she was always on top of, and it worked. It
Yeah.
worked. She was definitely distracted by this, and she felt in her heart of hearts that this was helping, and I believed it, and I was doing everything I could to make sure that I never complained, about the drink. Like I would say, Mom, this one is really bad, but she never took it personally. I know it was never meant personally. It was
Yeah.
almost, let's get it to a good place, the juice.
Yeah. Yeah. The juice.
So,
Yeah.
I think that's, she kind of took, like you mentioned, resiliency. She really was resilient and said, okay, I understand where you're coming from. I'm going to take something on and I'm going to help you. And she did.
She did. And if I remember correctly, wasn't Carrie, Gus's wife, Gus, your friend, Carrie, his wife, she was the one that talked about juicing as well. Like I
Oh my
remember
God, she
her
believes that.
being,
Yeah.
yeah,
To this day, she
yeah.
believes the juicing was what cured me.
Yes, yes. I remember Carrie was involved in the juicing. At least she was the catalyst for the juicing thing. So yeah,
Hmm.
you're right. And I do think that became Mom's, you know, her way of helping in the scenario, because I think as a parent, and even for us as your siblings and just your family, everybody that loved you, you feel impotent. There's nothing you can do. So it's like, okay, what can each of us do? What is our role so that we can help you? And I think that's important to, acknowledge the caretakers. When someone is severely ill, obviously the focus is on the patient, as it should be. But the caretakers also take a toll, right? The whole process is very difficult on the caretakers emotionally, physically, psychologically, everything. And so yeah, for everyone, it was everybody took on a different role, and Mom did the juicing,
And I
and
think,
and obviously the prayers. She was a
yeah,
prayer warrior, but
and I shared that with her because I know that, like all of you, I felt like I was that things were a little bit out of control,
yeah.
and you want to feel control. And I think that's why I told her, find something, because it's going to make
Mhm.
you feel, it's going to give you some control over something. But I have a funny story, but I think it needs to come after Dr. Ardalan.
Oh my gosh, I was going to say, and we're almost an hour into this episode. This is probably going to be a 3-parter
Oh my
too. But
Lord.
anyway, so you get passed over to the oncologist who's going to be taking care of you, Dr. Bach Ardalan, who, by the way, is still at the Sylvester. Let's talk about Dr. Ardalan. I
So
love him. I'm so grateful to him forever. I will forever be grateful to him.
I love this man.
Yeah.
So, so a couple of days later, might even have been the next day. That I don't remember, but it was
Yeah.
definitely the same week. I think I got the stent put in the day after I saw Hellinger, and the day after the stent is when I saw Dr. Ardalan.
Mm.
So I don't remember if there were. I don't know if the whole gang was there, if it was the four of us or the three of us there. I don't remember
It
if it
was
was
just
you,
the three
Jerry,
of
and
us.
Mom.
No,
I
Mom
don't.
wasn't there.
So it was just you and Jerry.
Yeah.
That's the one detail I don't remember. But we're in this examination room, and I'm sitting on the exam table. And the exam table has those papers at the liners.
Yes.
This man walks in, and he looks like he stepped off the set of Frankenstein. He's got the little round spectacles. He's got the salt and pepper hair, curly, and it looks like Kramer from
Hmm.
Seinfeld.
Yeah.
And this man is a mad scientist. And I'm looking at him going, this cannot be my doctor. And behind him is this woman who must be 5 feet tall, super dark black hair, with a stack of files and taking little stutter steps behind him.
Adorable. And she's
She was
adorable. She's
adorable.
uh
And she puts the files down, and the first thing he tells me is to get off his table. And I'm like, okay. So he rips off the paper and pulls a new sheet out and starts drawing the digestive system on this table. And I'm like, what in the name of God is going on? So he's saying, well, right here is where the tumor is. So what we're going to have to do, and this is in an English accent, by the way, to
yeah,
add to the,
right.
yeah,
He's
to add to
British.
the
Yeah.
whole thing.
Hmm.
And he's like, so what we're going to have to do is cut this out. And once we cut out the tumor, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start with chemo. And you and I and Jerry, we start looking at each other saying, wait a minute, this wasn't what was talked about. Again, being an advocate for yourself. And I said, well, wait a minute. That's not what Dr. Hellinger said. They
Oh,
put
but
a
wait, didn't Ardalan say, didn't Ardalan say surgery first? Because
and that's
Hellinger
what
had changed.
we're going to
Yeah,
have to cut
yeah,
the tumor out. So he was talking
yeah.
about surgery, and we're like, well,
Right.
wait a minute, that's not what we were told, a
Hmm.
couple of days ago. So
Yeah.
he turns around to Myra, who hands her the CAT scan. He does the same thing. I don't
Yeah.
know how these doctors see this.
Yeah, he
He
was
went,
flipping through it in the air. It was the most remarkable thing. I wish we would have recorded all of this back then, but go on.
yeah. He gives it back to Myra, and he says, "Oh," rips up the digestive system that he has just drawn, and he starts with FUDR, CPT11, leucovorin, and dosages and stuff. And Myra's scribbling on her notebook what she's seeing on there, and
Right, because he continues to write on the liners.
he continues to write on the liners. Yeah, not
Yes.
a blackboard or anything, on the liners.
Right.
So he turns around and he tells me, "Listen, you're young, which means I can give you exponentially more chemo than even a 40-year-old. So what's going to happen is this. I'm going to bring my big guns at this. I'm not going to bring my knives and machetes. This battle is going to be won with my guns. And if the cancer doesn't kill you, my chemo will." And I
And those, ladies and gentlemen, those were the exact words he used. I was there.
I'm just looking at the sky, and I don't know. You would think what would come over you is a sense of, I got to get the hell out of here.
Hmm.
How fast can I get out of this room? I can't tell you the sense of calm and confidence that came over me when he said that.
Yeah.
It's almost like, you're the guy I need. You
Hmm.
are the guy that's going to save my life.
Yeah.
Um, and I said, okay, what do I need to do? And he goes, you want to start tomorrow? And I'm like, what? I don't know if you remember that. He says, you want to start tomorrow?
Yes.
And I said, whoa, hold on a second. Let's not go that far. And he goes, okay, well, if we can't start tomorrow, then we're going to have to install a port. That'll be the next step, and then we'll get you started on Monday. So another little mini surgery where they put in a little
Port.
port where they can access the chemo.
Yeah.
So I remember he asked me if I had any questions, and the dumbest question, I have the dumbest questions sometimes. I ask him, so I wear contact lenses. Is that something that I can continue wearing while I'm on chemo? And that's the look he gave me. And he says, well, and he goes, your eyes might dry out, but if you have a pair of glasses, I would probably recommend wearing the glasses. I'm like, all right, thanks. So he explained that what was going to happen. I was going to have a 24-hour infusion of chemotherapy. It was going to be every week. So every week I would have to get admitted into the hospital. I was going to have blood tests done every week. And I would have an hour infusion of this one chemo drug, CPT11, and then 24 hours of this other drug called FUDR. And through the whole thing, I would also have this other drug called leucovorin, which is really just like vitamin B.
Hmm.
And it wasn't the drugs that were experimental, it was the protocol.
Right.
That 24-hour infusion was something that wasn't being done to too many people. They were experimenting with it. So that's when I signed all the pieces of paper. But it was interesting because I asked about the contact lenses because they were giving me problems anyway, and
Yeah.
and I would always wear them, and the glasses that I had were so old that I couldn't see through them or anything. So I'm staying at your house,
Hmm.
and I asked, "Hey, listen, can you guys give me a ride because I need to go to go get glasses?" And Carlos said, "Oh, I know a great place. Let's go." So I went with Carlos and Carlos Jr., your
Hmm.
stepson, my nephew. He was how old at the time? Like 14? I mean, he was young.
No, he was young. He was 11,
Maybe even
11
younger
or
than that,
12.
right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hmm.
So the three of us go to the to go get glasses, and it was so funny because I'm trying on glasses and I'm turning to Carlos. What do you think? And he's like, I don't know. And I go, what about this? And he's like, I don't know. What about this? And he's like, oh, that one looks really oh. So this guy, the guy behind the counter, must have thought we were a couple. And so he starts, he's so we're going to take these. And he's like writing down, what's your address? I'm like, oh, I don't know. What's our address, Carlos? And he starts giving him the address. So he must have thought Carlos Jr. was our child. And we adopted
Right.
Carlos Jr. and we were a couple. So we're leaving. And as we're leaving, I see a Supercuts, which I don't even know if they exist anymore. And
Yeah.
I go, hey, Carlos, can we go in there? I need to do something. And he's like, yeah, sure. So I sit down, and my hair was a little longer than it is now, and a little more fuller and less gray. Um, and I sit down, and I told the girl, get me a number one all the way across. And she's like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, I'm sure. I want to get it crew cut all the way down, even the top. Take it all off. So she takes the number one, and she goes through the whole thing. I get out of the chair, and I'm looking for my brother-in-law and my nephew. And I see them both had gotten a haircut, and they both did the same thing. And it was like, oh, solidarity. The
Yeah.
three of us got these buzz cuts that were nuts.
Yeah. That was pretty cool.
And it was pretty cool. And I'm thinking, you know what? It was about control.
Yeah.
If I was gonna lose my hair, you watch on TV and you see, how they depict cancer on TV. And I'm thinking, if I'm going to lose my hair, if all this is going to happen while taking chemo, I'm going to be in control of when I lose my hair.
Right.
So I show up the next morning, and Dr. Ardalan looks at me and he says, "What did you do to yourself?" And I'm defiant, and I'm telling him, "You know what, Doc? If I'm going to lose my hair, it's going to be on my terms, not yours." And he says, "But you're not going to lose your hair with the drugs I'm giving you."
He was probably thinking, this guy asked me about contact lenses. He should have asked me about his hair.
Exactly. You are not George Costanza.
You were not George Costanza.
So yeah, that's how that started. So
Yeah, that was great.
one
And
after
then
the other.
it was, yeah. And then the first chemo session was the following week. You had already they had put the port in you. And again, it was just Jerry, you and I. And then you wanted to hear A Beautiful Day by U2. So you just kept playing that song over and over and over again. So I wanted you to talk a little bit about that and, why that song.
So so we talked about the tour. It was like 6 weeks before. They had just gone on tour in support of their new album, All That You Can't Leave Behind. And that album had come out the previous October, November. So I was listening to it a lot, digesting it because it was, a new U2 album. But that song in particular, I was listening to it because it's about everything going wrong. It's about, all these things going wrong, but in the end, hey, it's still a beautiful day.
Yeah.
So I would listen to it and listen to it because it was the one thing reinforcing, okay, this is going to be whatever happens, good or bad, it's going to be okay. We're going to do our best to, not get
through
into
it.
a really dark place.
Yeah.
So I was listening to that, and I remember my first day of chemo. This was one of the few days where I was really anxious. I remember being nervous, and I remember because you don't know what's going to happen. And I was listening to the album on CD on a
Yes.
Walkman, not the iPod or your phone because that didn't exist.
Again,
And
context, 2001.
Context.
Yeah.
A pre 9/11 world.
Yes.
So I was sitting in the chair waiting, and I remember having my eyes closed, and I was tearing up, and I get a tap on my arm, and it was this lady. I don't know who she was, and she introduced herself. Her name was Nora, and she was a fellow cancer patient. And she says, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, no, I'm okay. It's my first day. It's my first day having chemo." And she goes, "Listen, it's going to be okay. Don't worry. what you see on TV. It's not going to happen the first go around. It takes a lot of time for the chemo to build up in your body before any of that stuff starts happening. So nothing's going to happen to you today,
Yeah.
or anything like that. And I was like, thank you so much. That means that really meant a lot. But
Yeah.
how my brain works,
Again.
that seed was planted, and I will tell you, throughout the entire journey up until the very, very end, I never threw up.
Yeah.
Never, none of that stuff ever happened, because I remember she told me nothing was going to happen. So I always thought nothing was going to happen.
Yeah.
I had, I had things happen, but it was interesting how I never threw up.
No, you didn't.
Um,
I remember
I
you complaining that you would get a little nauseous, and so you would get the Jolly Rancher candies that they would help
they had
you with
given
the
me pills
nausea.
for nausea, and they had given me pills
Right.
for throwing up. And whenever I got nauseous, I didn't take the pills. I would either
Mhm.
drink cranberry juice or suck on. They were actually not Jolly Ranchers. They were Skittles.
Oh, oh,
I
that's
would eat
right.
some
I thought it was
Skittles.
Jolly Ranchers. Maybe I was having the Jolly Ranchers. Anyway.
I would eat Skittles, and it would take the nausea away. So, hey,
Yeah.
practical advice. If you're
There
ever
you go.
nauseous with under chemo, take some Skittles.
At least try it, right?
Or at least
But
try it.
what I loved about Dr. Ardalan, in addition to what he said so definitively about how he was coming at you with everything he had, right? That gave all of us a sense of hope. Like, okay, this man is trying. Like he's on our team and he's going to give it everything he's got. He also very much believed in, like, mind over matter and your spirit, and how you were feeling mentally and emotionally. And he introduced you to Antonio, who was a
Mhm.
fellow patient, who was a very positive person. And I remember Antonio came to visit you, and Dr. Ardalan's visits were always more about, he would look at the numbers very quickly. Oh yeah, I gotta, Myra, we gotta lower the dosage this week because I almost killed him last week. But how you doing, JC? What'd you do this week? And it was always about your job, or did you do this, or did you see this game? Like his rapport with you, I don't know, I'm assuming he did that with all his patients, but at least with you, I know that it was all about your entire life. It wasn't just focused on the science and the
I
numbers and,
Because
you know?
I think he had an intuition about where I was coming from,
Hmm.
that I didn't want to reinforce. And this is coming into where the emails came in. I
Yeah.
didn't want to reinforce that I was sick,
Hmm.
mind over matter.
Right.
So he would do everything. He would talk about, all the numbers, but then we would just talk anything but.
Yeah.
And I think if he did it with other patients, that's awesome. But I know he did it for me, and I don't know if it's because he had an intuition about that. Um, but yeah, he would. I'll share a story to fast forward. That after I got well, where you have to do your maintenance CAT scans. Um, After I got well, I mean, I had lost my job. I went to go I went to go to a new job, and I had to go to training up in New York. And shortly after I came back from training, I went to a CT scan. This was way back. And I tell him, yeah, I just came back from New York. I was, doing a training, this and that. I got a new job. Oh, that's great. Every single time where I went to see him, he thought that I would fly in from New York. This is what a kooky is. Hey, so how's life in New York? I'm like, doctor, I don't live in New York.
It's just a training.
It was just a training. And sure enough,
Yeah.
I'd seen him 6 months later. Hey, how's New York? I don't live in New York.
Yeah, but he was awesome. But
I love him.
so speaking, you briefly touched on it. So your first evening at the Sylvester, because as you mentioned earlier, they were 24-hour infusions, so you had to be admitted into the hospital at the Sylvester. And that first night, it was ridiculous, JC. When we look back on it, how many people were in the room? Everybody went to visit you. Mom
So,
was there, obviously, all of your friends. I mean, it was crazy. It
yes,
was like a happy hour.
so a little bit of background on that. So I'm sure you'll remember. if you rewinding a little, once I found out how bad it was, um, I called all my friends and I asked them to meet me at your house.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because there's one thing instinctually that I knew, and at the time, I remember looking at my phone and seeing like 40 missed calls, and I don't know how many emails. And I would start to call some folks back and talk about them, folks from work. And I remember thinking, I can't do this. I cannot do this time and time again on a weekly basis, telling people, "Oh yeah, I went through chemo. I did this. I had a stent to, pull up my butt." It was, to me, it was just reinforcing that I was sick. And I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to not be in denial, but I wanted to get as far away from that and only deal with that when I had to deal with it.
Yeah, you wanted
So,
normalcy. You wanted a sense of
right.
normalcy within
I
the
wanted to
insanity.
be
Yeah.
I wanted to be as normal as possible when I could be normal. So I remember when finding out how bad it was, I called all my friends. I told them all to meet me at your house,
Mm-hmm.
and we all met, and I told them, and I said, "Listen, this is how bad it is. This is what's going to go on. I'm going to be, doing chemo, blah, 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 experimental protocol." And I remember letting them know, don't cancel anything. If you got a trip to go to, a cruise, whatever, go on it. Don't think you can't go on any trips. Don't think you can't do anything. We're still gonna, if you want to go out to dinner, we'll still go out to dinner. If you want to do whatever, have a party, we'll still go out to parties. Life is normal. We're just adding something new to the routine.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I told him, I only want to say this once because I don't want to keep reinforcing it. And I go, I will give you guys all updates every week. I will share what went on and I'll send you guys an email. And I
Mm-hmm.
go, I can't be making phone call after phone call after phone call because I do not want to reinforce the fact that I'm sick.
Yeah.
So we all, the support group that I have, my friends are, they're my second family. We're all
Mhm.
like, all right, we're on board, we're good, and
Yeah.
it would be worthwhile to talk to them to find out how they felt that day.
Yes.
Um, I know how I felt. I felt a little stronger that day because I looked around the room and it was like these are my brothers, you know,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I can get through this with them, you know.
Yeah. Well,
So it'd be
you
interesting to
had
find
such.
out what they thought.
I know. Well, maybe we'll just have to do another episode, but just to invite them. But no, seriously, because important to know. I mean, you have a gift in that your friends. You guys are all friends from high school. You've known each other since you were whatever 13 years old, and you're still to this day very, very close. And I think that that's not everybody has that, and
Hmm.
so that's a beautiful gift. And in addition to that close knit group of friends, you also had really nice and very empathetic and compassionate work friends. And like you had a lot of friends from different facets of your life. And going back to that first night, your room was packed with people. And a funny anecdote, we were all having a great time. It literally was ridiculous. It was like a happy hour. And all of a sudden, knock, knock, knock. And the door opens and a priest comes in. And we're all like, oh, hello. He
Who are
was
you?
taken aback. Who are you? Why are you here? And he was like, hi, no, I'm here. Do you want a blessing? And we were all just, it was so funny because it just felt like we were just in a room where you happened to be sitting in this bed hooked up, right?
And
But it
we're
could
all
have,
having a great time. We're laughing our
yeah.
butts off, and yeah, I remember my friend Bobby was there, Tammy and her husband, my friend Steve that I've known since I was like
Mhm.
5 years old,
Yeah.
Gus, Carrie. It was so many folks in that room.
Yeah.
And I do remember the priest coming in and to talk about defense mechanism. I remember telling him a joke, a very inappropriate joke, and everybody was like, "Oh my God." And he was laughing too. And then he
Yeah.
finally, he did a prayer and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
anointed me. I think it was
Yeah.
he did the anointing of the sick.
He did the
Um,
anointing of the sick. Yeah. Yeah.
but it was
But it
almost
was
like Go.
No, that I was going to say it was beautiful because we didn't request that.
No.
So I feel like he just, like he came in out of nowhere. I really believe that was God sent because normally in those situations you request for that and we didn't. So it was a beautiful gesture and surprise and a blessing, literally and figuratively. Yeah.
Yeah, and
And that
after
was the
everybody
beginning.
left, yeah, and after everybody
Hmm.
left at that point, that's when I met Antonio that night.
Hmm.
He walked
Yeah.
into in my room with his little R2D2, his little IV bag, and we
Yeah.
just chatted for a little while. And it said the same thing that Nora did. Hey, listen, don't worry about it at the beginning, you know. Like, all right, cool, you know. And
Yeah.
we would see him all the time.
Yeah.
We would see him.
Well, because what ends up happening is that, you know, you're on a set schedule, right? So now your chemos were every Monday, and so were theirs. So there was like a small group of people that we would see every Monday going
Right,
through the same thing, and they were all patients of Dr. Ardalan. So you all were under this non-protocol treatment. So
right.
that they were a part of the community as well, and you know, I wanted to stress the emphasis of community because, as I mentioned in the intro, you know, faith and community and science came together, you know, for you, and your emails, because again at the time there was no WhatsApp, there was no texting, none of this existed, or texting did, but it was very mundane. It wasn't something we did to communicate so frequently. So you start sending an email that became, you cleverly called it chemo update. And funny enough, what we all started doing, and this is why it was so odd for us to decide not to share with mom what was going on with you, because we are the type of people that were very open. So at work, I told everybody what was going on. Everybody at work. I mean, 24 years later, people still ask me, even though I'm not working there anymore, when I bump into certain people that were
How's your brother?
part of that. Yeah. Hey, how's your brother doing? Oh,
Yeah.
no, he's good, you know, because everybody lived through it. And I think it helped all of us, you know, like, you know, with prayer, with support, with encouragement. But then they were, oh, can you add me to the update? You know, and so
Yeah.
your list, you know, what do you call that? The email list was huge. I mean, it was, I don't even know how many
So
people.
I'll tell you what happened there. And like I said, I decided very early on, before even the first update, of how I was going to communicate with everybody. And it was because it was more a survival instinct than anything. I didn't want to
Yeah.
spend my time, you know, talking to people. Um, so yeah, I remember the first email was very, if you read through these updates, the first email was just standard. You know, hey, I went through this, I went through that. Little joke, little joke. I'll see you guys later. Thanks for all the prayers. Yay.
But
And
by the way, but you, even the title though, in the beginning,
in the beginning, well,
you know,
no, actually,
so,
the titles came afterwards.
oh,
I'll share
okay.
where the titles came from. So
Uh-huh.
it didn't have a title. They were all just chemo updates.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. It was very quick, and I can't even tell you how it happened. But I decided from the second email on that I was going to have fun with this.
Hmm.
Um, so updates like 2 through 7, I wanted to make sure that the number was in the story somehow. So
Hmm.
the second one was about a boxer, round 2. The third one, it was actually when I got canceled, because my chemo numbers were so low that I was that close to death.
Yeah.
But the fourth number had 4. Number 5 was about Mylene because she wore the number 5. And I think
Hmm.
at 7, I kind of just gave up on it because I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do with this. But it slowly morphed from that, and I think it started with Mylene's,
Hmm.
where it was I'm starting to see things in a different way.
Yeah.
Like the emails were kind of changing me and my perspective on things. So I would look for things,
Hmm.
and I started finding lessons. And it's something that would happen to me would teach. They were all teachable moments. So I started each update started becoming like a teachable moment.
Yeah.
And it just went on and on and on. So to answer your question, as they started going through, I would get replies from friends saying, "Hey, can you add so and so onto your mailing list?" Yeah, sure. There were people on there that I had no idea who they were, but it got
Hmm.
up to like 40, 50 people that I was sending these emails out to. And
Yeah.
I would get replies sometimes, "Oh, I love this one." I'm like, "Who is this? Who is sending me this email?" So it was interesting because it must have been like 20, 25 emails in. I think it was a total of like 40, but like 20 or 25 emails in, I remember I was talking to Gus and Carrie, and we were talking about what to do with this because Carrie was one of those ones telling me, "Hey, can you add so and so to the list?" And I was like, I'm like, I don't know what to do with them. I don't have them. They're emails. And
Yeah.
she tells me I have every single one of them saved. And I'm like,
Hmm.
what? So she sent them all back to me, and I gave them to you, and you put them on a Word document.
Yeah.
And that's when I kind of looked at them and started putting titles on them.
Hmm.
So that's where I went back. And I made it a case afterwards to keep the emails,
Yeah.
and put them on Word. So at the end, I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but I knew that I wanted to keep them.
Yeah.
At first I was thinking of a book. I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what happened there.
Yeah, those chemo updates were great, and you and I have talked about this about potentially doing a separate podcast where we would focus on each one. So anybody who's listening out there, if you guys would be interested in hearing these updates, we can do a separate series all on its own, because that's a whole other, literally a whole other season of another podcast, because they were great. They were creative, they were inspiring, and I'm glad that they were helpful for you, but I know that they were also helpful for everyone else who was cheering you on and praying for you. So that was beautiful. So let's talk now about your health, just to keep the story going. So you had all these rounds of chemo, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember the number, but I think it was like after 8 sessions they did a CT scan, right? And that's when they discovered, hey, the
So
tumors have reduced.
yeah, so I had a CT scan. Yeah, it was about 8 treatments. They did a CT scan, and they had never seen anything like it. The tumor on my colon, they couldn't find it. It was gone.
Hmm.
I had 2 softball-sized tumors in my liver. Those had reduced to golf balls, to the point where my doctor said, "Listen, we showed your scan to the head of the transplant unit at the hospital, and he thinks they can go in there and cut them out." And it was the first time we ever heard the word surgery and taking
Right.
something out.
Since the
So
beginning.
since the
Yeah.
very beginning,
Yeah.
we thought this was incurable, this was inoperable. That's what we had been hearing.
Hmm.
So it was like, oh, okay. And I I remember hearing about it and thinking, all right. I wasn't in the, oh my god, I'm going to be cured, yay. I wasn't um in that camp, but it was like, okay. It felt weird to me. Like, I almost didn't believe it,
Hmm.
if that makes any sense. I was
Yeah.
like, you're shitting me. You didn't just say that. It was almost like, you guys are kidding me. Come on. When's the truth gonna come out?
Yeah.
But obviously I was happy about it. But I was also, I don't want to use the word leery, but it was one of those things that I treaded carefully,
Yeah.
with all the stuff that was coming, especially like,
Right.
you're gonna go into my liver. Okay.
Right, because that was unexpected, because the whole time it was all about, if you were having surgery, it was going to be in the colon. And now all of a sudden, oh, we're going to go into your liver. And, I know that for you, you were treading cautiously. I think for me, and I think for mom and us, we felt such a sense of elation, hope. Like hope was take it to another level. We were hopeful that this would work, but we were still treading cautiously.
Yeah.
But
I
now
didn't know
it's
what it
like,
meant. I
yeah,
just didn't know what it meant.
for me, I was like, wow, this is actually working. Like, this is
Yeah.
working. And then, so we meet Dr. Livingston, I think is his name.
Dr. Livingstone.
Yes.
So
He
to give
was
you,
the chair. I think he's still there, by the way.
he's still there. And
Yeah.
to set the stage for Dr. Livingstone, after my third chemo treatment, I had gone down to about 150 pounds.
Mhm.
Um, I I hadn't been that light since like freshman year of high school, and
Yeah.
and my doctor, they actually canceled my chemo because my white blood cells were so low that I was very prone to infection that I couldn't even go out. Um, and he tells me, listen, I don't care, I don't care what you do, but you got to gain weight. I'm like, gain weight. Uh, there, when you stay overnight at the hospital, there you get a lot of visitors, and one of the visitors that I got at the time was a nutritionist,
Mm.
and I remember asking her, what, I have liver damage. This is what's going on. What kind of diet can I go? She's like, oh, you should eat, some fish, some pastas, but keep the fats low. So I started doing that. Mom would make pasta for me, some light fish. They were very light meals, and I was losing a ton of weight. So I remember telling Dr. Ardalan, listen, man, I'm listening to your nutritionist, man. She's telling me to eat pasta and fish, so that's what I'm doing. And he says, who? And he goes, this is the nutritionist. She comes around and she tells me to eat stuff. She gives me a diet. And he says, listen, I don't care what you have to do. I don't care what you eat, but you have to start gaining weight. And
Mhm.
another seed planted, because I went on a rampage. I started having, those little Ensures.
Yes, yes.
I would eat breakfast, drink the juice that mom gave me, and drink an Ensure. I would eat lunch, I would drink an Ensure. I would have dinner, drink an Ensure. I would eat snacks in between. Tuesdays were my chicken sandwich day. My friend Bobby, this was a friend that I work with, Bobby Llorente.
Yeah.
He used to come on Mondays, and he saw the crowds that were coming in on Monday. So he said, you know what, dude, I'm going to start coming in on Tuesday. Do you need me to bring you anything? I'm like, ooh, if you're going to come in on Tuesday, you know what you can bring me? There's a BK that's right around the neighborhood that makes the best chicken sandwiches. Get me a chicken sandwich with cheese. And he would
But
bring
from
one.
that Burger King, because
That
you're right,
specific
that
Burger King.
Burger King, they best chicken sandwiches.
To this
Yes.
day, to this day.
Yeah.
So he
Yeah.
would bring me a chicken sandwich with cheese every Tuesday, and I'd gobble that thing up. I gained so much weight, it wasn't even funny.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I
I see
remember.
Dr. Livingstone, and this guy's an even bigger quack than Dr. Ardalan. He's
But very different in a
it
very
was a
different
very
way.
different, he had a very different
Yeah.
demeanor. It
Yes.
was very, think of it like Tony Randall in The Odd Couple. It's like very, very straight, very talking very fast.
Yeah.
And then he goes, I remember him telling me, he goes, you got to lose weight. You're incredibly fat. I don't like operating on fat people. I'm like, what?
What?
Who is this man?
Yeah. I remember him patting you on your stomach, like, what is this? We got to get rid of this.
We got to get rid of
oh
this.
boy. Yeah.
And then I remember him
That was
telling me,
crazy.
and I don't want to, I'm sure he didn't mean anything bad by it, but he goes, listen, those people out there, 70, 80 years old, they don't have much time. Nothing's going to happen. You, I'm going to take care of. I'm like, okay.
They did. They did do that.
And they
did
did,
take
man.
care of it. Yeah.
So I remember he's telling me that I'm going to get a Mercedes-Benz car. He goes, you're going to get a Mercedes-Benz. I'm like, what? So they were going to cut from down here. Think of a Mercedes-Benz logo. and
Mm-hmm.
it's a straight line with the two intersecting like that. So they were going to
Yes.
cut like that. They were going to cut like that, open the flap, and they were going to take out 80% of my liver. So the interesting thing, I never knew about this. The liver is the only organ that regenerates. So I was going to
Yeah.
have a new liver afterwards. At the
Right.
time, since I was going to be like completely open, the gastric surgeon, Dr. Hellinger, was going to be there to
Mm-hmm.
see if there was anything that needed to be done.
Right.
So sure enough, I went in for the operation, and I think you can speak more of the outside world of this. They went in, cut 80% of my liver. They found another lesion that they couldn't cut out, because if not, I would have no liver. And
Yeah.
they ablated that with alcohol to burn
Mm-hmm.
it off. The colon was fine, and they sewed me up. And I remember afterwards, oh, and they went in laparoscopically as well to check the colon. I don't remember what it was for, but they went in laparoscopically and they opened me up. And afterwards, when I got out of the surgery and I was better, I realized they only gave me like half a Mercedes.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have the other side. So I
Yeah. You
remember when I
had
saw him,
a
I
backwards
asked him, and
J.
I told him I thought I was going to get a Mercedes. He goes, I had no time for the Mercedes. I had to go teach a class, so I just cut you open. I said, I got to take out this stuff, and I put it back. I'm like, okay. He talked like
Important to
those old
note.
style radio guys.
Yes.
That's how he
Yes.
talked.
No, and important to note, like teach a class because again, it's part of the University of Miami, so a lot of the doctors are professors as well. So yeah, I remember all of that, and that surgery was very intense because it was like over 6 hours. You were in ICU. You gained an exponential amount of weight. It was water weight. I mean, it was bad. You were like a blowfish for quite a few days. That was rough. That surgery for you was very rough. And then that's when they decide to do radiation after that because Dr. Hellinger felt that he couldn't see it, but he felt that there was an area in your abdomen that needed some sort of, radiation to it. I don't remember the
So
specifics, but
yeah, so
yeah.
here comes the chair, the famous chair in his office.
The bad
We go
news
see
chair.
Yeah, we go see Hellinger, and I don't remember why we had to see Hellinger since he wasn't the liver surgeon or anything. We went to see him, and he mentioned an area in my abdomen. He says what we're going to try is 6 weeks of radiation with a sensitizing chemo every week.
Mhm.
And I was like, radiation, and at the time I was in a rut. The one
Yeah.
thing that you'll see in the emails, I want to make sure that to tell everyone out there that this wasn't all fun and games. There were moments where there were serious things happening, and I this was at a time where I had 8 chemo sessions. There was a lot of things going on. I had lost my job. 9/11 happened.
Yeah.
Um, and the recovery from the liver surgery was tough. It was a tough recovery. I remember a part of my incision opened. The laparoscopic surgery incision opened. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh Lord. And for context, the laparoscopic incision was by his belly button, but he was so bloated that it popped open literally. And the doctor in the one of the follow-up visits came in, and this was all total like I don't know, Conan the Barbarian. I don't
It
know
was
how
all
else to
Rambo.
describe it.
It was
Rambo, yeah.
Rambo.
And he's just sewing you up, and I'm like,
I'm
what
like, am I
is
going to get anesthesia? Am
happening?
I going to get anesthesia? He goes, anesthesia? You don't need anesthesia. I'm just going to do it right here.
Oh my gosh. And you started singing Frank Sinatra. And I'm
I,
just,
I grabbed your hand. I go, honey, I go, Joni, I need you to hold my hand.
and I'm like,
And
oh, okay. I thought I was going to pass out, but I'm like, sure, hold my
And then
hand.
I'm looking at you, and you're looking at my belly button, making all these faces, and I'm like, what? What's going on?
It was
And I
terrible.
start singing Frank Sinatra to get my mind off it.
Yeah, yeah. But that, like you said, and I think it is important that even though generally speaking, we maintained a hopeful, jovial attitude as a family and as a community, there were dark times, right? And there were difficult times for you in your recovery and how you were feeling physically and mentally and just emotionally. It takes a toll.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And radiation
Absolutely.
was one of those things that, yeah, it was not something I was expecting because by this point, we had heard the news that there was going to be a surgery. I came out of that surgery, and while the recovery was rough, I came through it.
Yeah.
And this was a major surgery where if you lose your liver, you're done. And
Yeah.
that looked to be was in fine working order. Um, so there was that hope that you always have. Now it's bigger. It's like, oh, good. You want to get more momentum, and this kind of slaps you back into reality. Oh, by the way, we're going to add this to your
Hmm.
plate. And I was just like, oh God, really? We have to do this?
Yeah.
And I remember radiation being the biggest slog
It
because
was
it
so
was
annoying.
every day for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
They gave me these little tattoos as markers.
Hmm.
And they took you to a separate waiting room, and you were all alone, and you waited there for an interminable amount of time. They finally call you in. They line you up, and it takes 30 seconds, and you've just wasted about 3 hours of your day for 30 seconds of time. It doesn't feel like anything's happening. All you hear is
Yeah.
this buzzing sound. So at least with chemo, you're seeing something going into your system. This,
Right.
all you hear is a little buzz noise. I'm like, what just happened? It was like
Yeah.
5 seconds. I'm like, that's it? Um, you're
And I,
expecting a Bruce Banner moment where you're in there for an hour getting buzzed. And no,
yeah.
it's like, buzz, like, oh, that's it?
Yeah.
So I always thought it was just a slog, and I couldn't wait for it to end.
Well, I think also in contrast to the experience with the chemo, it was so different because even like the chemo days, it became very routine for us. And then what started happening was at first it was Jerry, you and I, but then Jerry, had to work and he had small kids and all of that. So then it became mom, you and I, and then it became very routine. We would go in the morning on Monday. You would go, you would get your labs. We would sit in the lobby. We would joke around. We would laugh. We would talk to all the people that we would see every Monday. We would see Ardalan and Myra. And again, that consult was always about, hey, what did you do this week? Oh, what movie did you see? It didn't feel like it was a doctor's thing. And then I would go to work, mom would stay with you. But there was always a visitor. In other words, there was community. And to your point with the radiology, I remember taking you to those and it was just like, oh my God, so dreary. Even the lighting, it was
Hmm.
dark and it was like this
Old
narrow hall.
magazines. I mean, it was.
Yeah, even the magazines were lame. And then, like you said, they would take you into this little room and the room was dark and you're kind of like just staring at each other. And
And no
it was
one else
just,
was in there either. It's not like it was a waiting
no.
room with other people. You were there alone.
Yeah, yeah. So I remember the radiation took a toll on you, but to your point, like so much has happened in this journey, including 9/11. I remember you were in chemo during 9/11. We'll never forget that. And I would ask you, how many hours do you have left? How many hours do you have left? Because we just wanted to go pick you up and bring you home. Ironically enough, mom's birthday was September 11th.
Hmm.
So poor thing, that birthday was, and from then on out, it was just very different for her. But anyway, you had the liver surgery in October, you have these radiation treatments, and then now remind me, do you go back to chemo again, or was it time to now do the colon surgery?
So I did radiation,
Mm-hmm.
and the sensitizing chemo for each at the end of each week.
Okay.
And after radiation was over, they gave me a small break to do another scan to see where we were. Um, and we were kind of in a holding pattern,
Mm-hmm.
and it was such a slog. And I remember at that point they decided we're going to go back to just to see where we are, to make sure that we got everything. So we
Yeah.
went back to the 24-hour treatments.
Okay.
Um,
For
the
another
the
eight
di-
weeks? I don't
yeah,
remember that
until
part. Okay.
until it ended. So basically, I got like the holidays off, and I think I started up again either in mid January or something. I got some time off.
Yeah.
We did a scan, and at the time, that's when I met. We met. You know, a mutual friend of mine from our old high school that told me about someone from our old high school that had gotten diagnosed with the same thing, and I met her sister, and they ended up bringing her to Artelon,
Yeah.
and she had started to do chemo from home, which I didn't even think that was an option.
Yeah.
Um, so when I got back to chemo, we didn't do the infusion from the Sylvester. We started doing it from home as well.
Yeah. But
And
question, wasn't that after your colon surgery? I thought that was after the colon surgery.
they did maybe one or two because
Mm,
they did have I did have some chemo before the colon surgery. It was maybe
yeah.
4 rounds, I think.
Right.
And then we did the colon surgery, and I
Yeah.
wasn't expecting the colon surgery. And the only reason they did the colon surgery was to get the stent out,
Yeah.
which was actually kind of surprising. The
Yeah.
stent, it was obviously made out of metal, and it had tissue that was growing all around it. So
Yeah.
they had to get it out. It wasn't to get a tumor out or anything, it was to get the stent out.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing about that day, I'll never forget it. It was February 22nd, 2002. So
Hmm.
222, 202.
Hmm.
And I always I always called that day the day of second chances.
Yeah.
So yeah, that day I had the colon surgery, and amazingly enough, the the surgery went incredibly well, and you can speak to that. It went incredibly well, but I I stayed in the hospital for like 10 days because
Hmm.
my pipes just weren't in working order.
Yeah.
Um, and they wouldn't let me go until that was resolved,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
that recovery took a while as well. I remember that,
Yeah.
and that
It wasn't as bad as the liver one, but yeah, you were in the hospital for a while and you were you it took a while for you to bounce back. I think it was just, let's be honest, your body had taken such a toll for, almost a year. That I think it's normal for it to, it takes a while for it to heal and get back to normal. But what I will say about the colon surgery is that this I will never forget. I'm in the waiting room with mom and my best friend, Millie, and her mom. And I don't remember anybody else being there at that moment, but the surgery, they had estimated X amount of time. And it was actually only like an hour or an hour and a little bit. And Dr. Hellinger comes out and he was just white as a ghost. And he came out like stunned, like in shell shock. And all four of us stood up because immediately you think bad news, right? And I was like, doctor, hello, like snap out of it. and he was like, it's extraordinary. I've never seen anything like this. He's completely clean. Because even though they knew that they were just going to go in for the stent, there was still things that they weren't 100% sure about. And he wasn't going to know until he went in. So he was just marveled at what he was seeing, from his perspective in like, it's just amazing, right? How life is. It just, everything came full circle because he was the first one to see everything, to diagnose you. And then to be the last one, I mean, that's not where the story ends, but still like to be the last one to like see and be like, wow, like this was the kid that I told 5% chance of getting through this, and here we are. I'm speaking for him, obviously, but I'm imagining that that's what went through his mind because just his demeanor, he was just completely amazed coming out of that operating room to
yeah.
give us that
And I
news,
and
and
I
it was
remember they also
incredible.
took out. I remember they also took out some lymph nodes on
Yeah,
top of the stent, and they did a biopsy on that, and they couldn't find any cancerous cells. They couldn't
I
find
know.
anything. So
So there you go. So it really, against all odds. my dear brother. You really, it's a remarkable, beautiful story. And like you said, there were a lot of wonderful moments, because I think that that's where you see the good in people, right? And moments that we could still joke about and laugh about. But there were also, some difficult times that, you in particular had to go through, but here you are 24 years later. So congrats.
Yay.
And with that said, because this is a Seeking Wisdom podcast, we like to give lessons learned. And I know you mentioned in your updates that there were so many lessons for you that you were actually like looking for. But do you think that there's one lesson that maybe you can share with, whoever's listening right now about your journey?
Well, I'm going to share a few things. I'm going to share a few things actually. So, first and foremost, have an advocate. Um, if you have someone that can go with you to appointments, um, have them go with you, because your mind is always going to be someplace else. You're going to ask stupid questions like, "Can you wear glasses?" when you should be asking better questions. Um, but try and have an advocate. And if you don't have an advocate, I would definitely recommend recording your appointments.
Mm.
Now that we have the ability to do that with your
Yeah.
doctor, so you can listen to what's being said afterwards when you're of clear mind, so you can make decisions that are good for you. One thing that they don't tell you, and it's one of the things that I've taken with me ever since then, they will tell you about all the side effects you're going to get, about the procedures, about how the drugs are being input in you. The one thing they'll never tell you is that you're going to meet others in the same boat that you are. You're going to be in waiting rooms, and those waiting rooms are going to be filled with patients that have the same affliction you have. Um, and you're going to talk to these people, and you're going to make friendships with these people. Um, and some of them are not going to be there at the end.
Yeah.
So, you know, honor those that you met. You know,
Hmm.
um, make sure you live your life as good as you can, and that leads me to the next thing is um, live your life. I mean, we mentioned it earlier too. Stick to your routine and let this just be. Give it its time, give it its attention, but don't try not to let it consume your everyday. Because I thoroughly believe in mind over matter. Um, Another thing that I think is really important, and it may be a little controversial, but um, allow yourself and allow others around you to poke fun at this,
Yeah.
um, to have a sense of humor about it.
Hmm.
Um, because the one thing that I learned is that when I made fun of cancer, I lessened its power over me. It wasn't the big monster that I was fighting. It was something that I could make fun of. So yeah, my friends and you, we've said some inappropriate jokes about cancer, but
Well,
they,
one of the chemo updates that Gus
oh
wrote.
my God. So it's,
Yeah.
they're, but they help. It helps to
Mm.
laugh at this. Um, the biggest lesson I learned was gratitude.
Yeah.
For friends, for family, for the profession, the medical
Hmm.
profession, and that includes the nurses, the administrators, the people making the appointments for you. They I mean, they came out in the forefront during COVID, but back then, they weren't
Hmm.
looked at as they are now.
Yeah.
And afterwards, if you're lucky enough to come through this, you're gonna have survivor's guilt.
Yeah.
Um, you're gonna try to assign. You're gonna look for something special. Oh, I survived for a reason. I need to do something big. I need to do something special. And and it's okay if you don't. It's okay to just live your life. That's the reward. The reward is your life. Live it how you see fit. If it turns out to be something big, then that's great. But it doesn't necessarily have to be. It's okay to just live your life. You don't
Yeah.
have to have a big thing going.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's true. It's true. Sometimes, we put so much pressure on ourselves to do everything has to be magnanimous and, and big and glorious and sometimes, it's in the small acts of kindness and in your everyday life that actually matter the most. So that's so true. If you'll indulge me as a caretaker, I also wanted to give some lessons that I learned from all of this. I have a few. Number one, miracles do happen. Prayers do get answered. And sometimes we may not get the exact answer to the prayers that we want, but we should never lose hope. And, going back to what you read of Lance Armstrong's book, just keep fighting and keep hoping. So that for me is key. There was a huge community. I mean, there was even a convent of nuns in Venezuela that was praying for you, that we weren't even aware about, right? That we weren't aware of until later.
I've still got the statue.
Yeah, the Divine Mercy Jesus statue that they sent you afterwards, because, again, community, right? We were sharing with everyone. So you just don't know how that's going to spread. And so that was beautiful. Number two, a little bit about what you're saying about live your life. But I think sometimes we don't realize the impact that we're having on others in the way that we live our lives. And the way that we live, the way that we conduct ourselves, people are watching, even though we may not be noticing. And in our case, on more than one occasion, because whenever you and I get together and, people who have watched or heard this podcast can tell we're always joking and laughing. We were always joking and laughing, and we were always, just about the silliest, stupidest things. And people would laugh. They would see us and they would laugh, and sometimes they would even think we were married, and we're like, no, we're siblings. What's wrong with you, But I think we inspired other people just by being who we were, right? So I think the way we live our lives, it matters.
Do you recall we're sitting there just in our own little world, laughing and joking around and being incredibly stupid, that this one gentleman just says, "You guys are so much fun. How long have you guys been married?"
Yes.
And we just broke out into even more laughter. And we're like, we're not married. We're brother and sister.
I do remember him. Yes.
And he started laughing. He goes, I love coming on Mondays because you guys come in and you guys are always laughing. And we're like, oh, thank you so much. That means a lot to us. We're hoping we're not disturbing anybody. He goes, oh, no. I love hearing you guys just, joke around and laugh. And we're like, well, thanks, man. He introduced himself, and, we had a great conversation that day. So
I do remember him. And yes, and that's why I bring that up, because it does matter. How you conduct yourself, it does have an impact on others. And number three, in the midst of the darkness, you have to try to find the light, and I think that we did that as a family and we did that as a community. And like you, I'm very grateful. Not just that you survived that immediate storm, but that 24 years later, you're still here to tell about it, And I'm, my heart is grateful. And, it's, I think I got a little emotional at the beginning in the intro because, the one person that's not here is Mom. And I know that if she were here, she'd probably be interrupting this conversation somehow by walking back here, trying to clean the wall or something, because that's what she would do. And I'm like, Mom, I'm recording, but I do. But I do think that she is here in spirit, and in our hearts, she will always and forever be. So.
And I'm very grateful that she didn't have to live through that, losing me,
Exactly. Yeah. Amen to that. So, well, thank you, sibling, for sharing
Well,
your
do you
story.
do you want to hear one of my updates?
Sure.
And this one actually has to do with mom.
Oh, there you go.
So you may not remember this morning, but mom this morning, we were scheduled to go to chemo, and she comes downstairs and starts slamming every kitchen cabinet and muttering and complaining and about everything and anything. And we're just kind of looking at her going, what happened? What is wrong with mom?
Why is she so cranky?
Right. So she's making the juice, making her coffee, and complaining the entire time. And we went to chemo, and we were in the waiting room. And as you and I are wont to do, we start bothering her about it. And the one thing that I'm always glad we were able to do is together we were always able to get her out of a bad mood. You
Hmm.
know, we
Yeah.
always were able to joke around with her, and she would be like, "Oh," she'd
Yeah. Yeah.
just come out of it. So it led me. I was in a really good mood that day, but it led me to this chemo update that day, which is called, and forgive me because it's a little long, but it's called My Complaint on Complaints. So blah blah blah. Traffic is so bad. My job sucks. I have too much work. My boss is a jerk. The kids make too much noise. The price of gas is too high. And JC won't shut up and leave us alone. Blah, 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 blah. I've been doing a lot of thinking about complaining. I complain as much as the next guy, but I don't consider myself a complainer, especially not since April 10th. For those of you not in the know, April 10th is my personal September 11th, the day I was diagnosed with the dreaded Big C. You might say to yourself, geez, Jay, if anyone has the right to complain, it's you. You may be right. But after seeing all the people in the Sylvester Center who don't have hair, look like walking cadavers with all their strength sapped out of them, to complain when I'm doing so well will be a disservice to them. Basically, the point of this update is to think before you complain. Now, I'm not preaching that you should invent every once in a while. Complaining does have its purpose. It releases stress, lowers the blood pressure, and sometimes it just gives you something to talk about. All I'm saying is think before you utter a meaningless complaint. If it's valid, rant, baby. Here's something to think about the next time you feel the urge to complain. I was doing a little reflection of 2001 this New Year's Eve, and all that's happened to me. To surmise, feeling like total crap from January 1st. This includes going to the bathroom 8 to 10 times a night. Number 2, going to 2 incompetent doctors who decide to wait till April for a colonoscopy. 3, find out I have a tumor blocking my intestine. 4, said tumor is cancerous. 5, have a metallic stent placed up my ass. 6, have a plastic port implanted in my chest. 7, find out cancer has spread to my liver. No more happy hours for me. 8, have to start aggressive chemotherapy sessions. 24 hours of boredom in hell. Please refer to Christmas chemo. Number 9, lose 30 pounds. That might sound awesome, folks, but this wasn't Weight Watchers. 10, rim and tire gets stolen from my car. Let's add insult to injury. 11, lose my place to live. No, I'm not homeless, but I'm 31 years old and living with my sister and mom. Not too good for the dating scene. 12, quit school. 13, said school charged me $2,000 for classes I did not attend. 14, gain 40 pounds. Actually, that is a good one, but damn, did I get fat. 15, lose my job. 16, lose 80% of my liver and gain a 12-inch scar on my tummy. 17, the 2 weeks after surgery gave new meaning to the words living hell, possibly the worst 2 weeks of my life. Number 18, my parking lights get stolen from my car. It's just comedy now. Those who know me know I will never shake this car bad luck thing. Public transportation, here I come. By the way, Gustavo did get me the light for my birthday. Debbie Boone singing, "You light up my life" in the background.
You're so silly.
19, this is my favorite one. 5 weeks of radiation therapy. Sadly, my theory of capturing a spider, radiating it, and having it bite me did not turn me into Spider-Man, but I digress. 20. So many fingers, probes, cameras, and stents shoved up my ass that I'm questioning my heterosexuality. Whew, still like women. So there you have it, my year in a nutshell. While all this seems bad, it doesn't compare to the wonderful support I've received, the incredible people I've met this year, and my so far miraculous recovery. This is why I now think before I complain. I'm not always perfect, but I'm trying. Just think before you tell yourself that your life is horrible. I know it's cliche, but there are people worse off than you, even worse off than me. Disclaimer, before anyone responds, no, I am not angry at the world. In fact, I'm in a very giddy mood today. Something just happened this morning that made me think about complaints in general. I also see the irony in an email complaining about complaining, so please don't point that out.
JC, it was awesome. That was a good one. That was one of the classics. And you did a great job of like summarizing the entire journey in one email. But again, thank you for opening your heart and sharing this. I know, and I've been telling you this for 24 years, your story is going to help so many people. And I know that it's going to, impact other people's hearts and just get inspired, even unrelated to cancer. So thank you. Thank you for sharing it. Thank you for being here. I wish you were here in person. I know, but we don't live in the same city anymore. So we did this digitally, but it's okay. We're together thanks to technology, which I hate. But anyway, thank you for that. And for all of you out there listening or watching, remember that you are not alone. Let's go out and seek wisdom together. Thank you for joining us in today's episode of the Seeking Wisdom podcast. My prayer is that something you heard today sparked courage and insight for your road ahead. If something in this conversation moved you, share it with a friend, like, subscribe, leave a quick review or a comment so that more people can hear about these stories of faith and resilience. Lastly, I'd like to invite you to join this circle of the community of wisdom seekers. Connect with us on social media at the handle @JoniMarmo or visit jonimarmo.com so we can keep this conversation going. And remember, you are never alone, and wisdom is waiting in your story.